Two bills to hear. One is 114, which is the ancillary school activities, and SB 44, which is expanding the Promise Scholarship Program. I think that's the one that's going to take the least amount of time, and we're going to begin there. But before I do, I said something yesterday that I want to reiterate. And yesterday I said, I am very proud of every single member of my committee. And we had a very successful hearing yesterday on a topic that can be very hard to discuss. And it was everybody's professionalism that helped to make that happen. So I wanted you guys to know that I really mean it when I say I'm very proud of each of you, and I appreciate your professionalism. Representative McNorton?
You took my thunder, but anyways, I would really appreciate all the work yesterday from both sides of the party and everybody included, and I really want to give a heads up to our chairman for keeping decorum and running a great meeting yesterday and showing professionalism. Thank you.
It was a group effort. Now, we're not, decorum does not include clapping, but that's sweet of you guys. So, yeah, at the end of yesterday, I did say there was something I forgot to announce, and about 3 hours later, I remembered what that was. We are hearing SB 114 today, and usually I leave a gap, and then we work it. And tomorrow, we will work this bill, and you're going to hear testimony about why the bill is time sensitive. But I wanted you to be able to keep that in mind as you work it. And I know I have an amendment to it, and I'll explain my amendment when we're all done. But I just wanted to be very upfront that if you have amendments, you need to make sure that you hustle. So on that note, I am going to open the hearing on SB 44. And we will begin. I don't think I ordered anything from the revisers, but we will, I'm sorry, research. So we will open with the reviser. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill 44 amends a couple of statutes in the Kansas Promise Scholarship Act to expand the post-secondary educational institutions that are eligible to participate in the Kansas Promise Scholarship Program. This was a program that was enacted, I believe, back in 2021 to provide a last dollar scholarship to eligible students who are enrolled in specific high-wage, high-demand, or critical need industry programs at eligible post-secondary educational institutions. Those institutions under current law include community colleges and technical colleges, as well as certain private institutions that offer the Promise eligible programs. The first amendment under Senate Bill 44 is into the statute regarding those eligible post-secondary educational institutions. You can see that on page 1 of the bill starting in line 22. So it would include any institution that has its main campus or principal place of operation in Kansas, offers a Promise eligible program, is accredited, is recognized by the State Board of Regents, and is eligible to receive Title IV funding under federal law. There's a conforming amendment and another statute of the act over on page 2 that goes along to make sure we pick up this new inclusion in eligible post-secondary institutions. And then finally, the Senate in its debate on the floor increased the annual appropriation limit for the program. You can see that on page 3 of the bill, line 9, from a $10 million annual appropriation to a $15 million annual appropriation limit for the program. The bill then passed the Senate on a final vote of 37-3. The changes would go into effect on July 1st, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for our reviser. Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jason. I was wondering, did you have any information on the number of these scholarships that have been granted in the past? It shows 68, I think, is the total, and I'm just wondering if those are.
No, I don't have those numbers in front of me right now. We can certainly get those numbers on the program.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Jason, thank you very much. We will move straight into proponent testimony as soon as we welcome Representative Ballard. And by the way, I had a wonderful meeting with some of your student government students chumming. KU was doing a very good job. So,
Thank you very much, and that's why I'm late.
all right. My first proponent is Charles Friedrichs. And Charles, we are going to give you 3 minutes.
Okay. A little nervous, so please bear with me. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Estes, Vice Chair McNorton, and members of the committee. Very grateful to be here today. As you already heard, I'm Charles Friedrichs, owner and managing director of Heartland Welding Academy. We're located in Andover, Kansas. I'd also like to thank Wichita Technical Institute for allowing us to work with them in bringing this bill forward. You've read our testimony explaining the values of schools like HWA and WTI. There's so much more that we could share and educate on if we had the time. Obviously, now's not the time to do that. I'd simply like to reiterate that schools such as ours should be included in those allowed to accept Promise Act scholarship funds. The money will not be wasted. We've demonstrated that we are a credible institutions provider. Our students have proven that these funds will go to good use. We're accredited by the Council of Occupational Education, and once a for-profit school is accredited, they can also apply to participate, as we know, in Title IV funds, meaning that we are approved by the U.S. Department of Education to accept federal financial aid, such as Pell Grants and federal student loans. Our graduation rates are above 85% in the field of welding. And not only are we at 85% in our graduation rates, we're also above the average in entry-level income. I'd like to ask the committee, when making this decision, to look at what other states are doing. Multiple states, including our neighbors, have grant funds available for students attending private for-profit certificate granting schools that recognize the value of privatized trades-based education. In 2022, the Missouri Fast Track Workforce Incentive Grant awarded 391 students an average of $4,100 to attend for-profit schools. Nebraska has the Opportunity Grant, which awarded over 13,000 students an average of $1,800 each. I'm not here today to ask you to give Heartland Welding Academy state funds. I'm here to ask you to consider giving Kansas students who are looking to enter into the high-demand fields such as welding an easier path to success. Help them reduce the amount of student loans needed to better themselves. Kansas needs skilled workers to build, to maintain, and to grow this great state. The demand for privatized trades education is there, the need for skilled labor is high, and the interest in the value of four-year college education is on the decline. We've already proven that we would manage these funds wisely and have proven that our students are a benefit to the Kansas workforce. In closing, I'd like to thank the committee for the time today, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Friedrichs. Do we have questions for the conferee? Representative Getz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wondering how many welders you are graduating through your program on average each year?
Sir, we graduate approximately 40 students a year. We're a niche program, and we only run 20 students per class.
Excellent. Thank you.
Other questions? Representative Hill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Frederick, thanks for being here. What kind of, just to follow up on the previous representative's question, what kind of employment rate are you getting for your graduates? Do you track that?
Yes, we track employment, placement, completion. As a for-profit school, we're obligated to do those things. Our employment rate is, I believe, right now sitting at around 87%.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate you being here today. Next, we have Jason Watkins on behalf of the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce. Jason, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason Watkins, Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'll be very quick. Promise Act is a great program. It is literally a life changer. We testified in the Senate that we support this bill. We asked for 2 amendments. The first one got on. That was taking it from 10 million to 15 million. The reason for that is we hit the cap last year on the Promise Act. There is a program that is going into its 3rd year. It's called Level Up Kansas, and you're now cursed because you're going to see it everywhere and be like, if he wouldn't have said that. Level Up Kansas very simply targets 25 to 45-year-olds that are working full-time, but they have no skills training, no degrees. They come from a background where education just wasn't really an option for them. So Level Up Kansas advertises to these people about tech training, junior college programs, and then they are assigned a navigator, and that navigator literally holds their hand through the entire process. Promise Act, Pell Grants, getting them enrolled, helping them find childcare, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a great program. I think in large part, not entirely, but in large part, we came up against the cap last year due to some of the efforts of Level Up Kansas. So appreciate that we took it from 10 to 15 million. The Second Amendment, you're not going to do this because we can't figure it out this year, but I need to plant the seed with you, Madam Chair. Level Up Kansas is advertising, because it advertises statewide, we come across a lot of people that live in Missouri, Colorado, and Oklahoma, and they would like to come to Kansas. You are not eligible for Promise Act unless you've been living in Kansas. And I'm watching the timer, so I'll say this quickly. A few years ago, we did the aviation jobs tax credit, and that was to get aviation workers to come into the state of Kansas. And when we originally wrote that, we said you were only eligible to participate if you graduated from a Kansas institution. We very quickly realized that was backwards. We need workers in Kansas. We need to be attracting people to come into this state. We think the Promise Act, well, we know the Promise Act will attract people, but right now they're not eligible to participate. So we would suggest at some point we figure out a way to make them eligible for the Promise Act, require them to live and work in Kansas for 2 years after they get that degree or that certificate. If they leave before that 2 years is up, they have to pay the money back. And with that, I'd stand for questions with 30 seconds left, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jason. Any questions for the conferee? Seeing none, we'll let you off the hot seat.
All right.
And
Thank you,
we'll
Madam
call up
Chair.
our next contestant. I have no other oral proponent testimony unless there's someone I missed. Please identify yourself and come to the podium. I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jenna Akpan, Corporate Director of Admissions from Wichita Technical Institute. Good afternoon, Chair Estes and members of the committee. Like I just said, my name is Jenna Akpan, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Wichita Technical Institute in support of Senate Bill 44. The Kansas Promise Act was designed to provide Kansas industries with employees needed to continue to grow and strengthen our Kansas economy. According to the 2024 Kansas Economic Report, it is obvious that we have more individuals leaving the workforce than entering it. Wichita Technical Institute has been training these established Kansans for the last 70 years. Kansans that have grown up here, have families here, own businesses here, and pay taxes here. Today, I'm here to advocate for choice, not only for our students, but others as well. We have to change our viewpoint that the Promise Act is funding the school, when in reality, it's funding the student. Students thrive and reach their fullest potential by choosing the best learning environment for them. The environment that will get them trained, certified, and in the workforce faster. Wichita Technical Institute has been training those Kansans since 1954, and during that time, we have grown to offer 6 high-demand, high-wage, critically needed areas of training, all of which are approved under the Promise Act. For the last 16 years, we've entered over 4,000 employees into the Kansas workforce, with graduation rates averaging 62% and placement rates at 78% in 2024. The numbers speak for themselves. The Accrediting Commission of Career Schools and Colleges, Kansas Board of Regents, U.S. Department of Education, Veteran Affairs and state agencies such as Kansas Workforce Center can access and verify annually that we are providing Kansans with the technical training needed to impact the economy in a positive way. But we're not just held accountable by those agencies. We're held accountable by taxpayers. Our students hold us accountable every day. The companies we work with apprenticeship programs like Spirit Aerosystems and Yingling Industries hold us accountable. The employers that hire our students hold us accountable. Although financial aid is available for those who qualify through forms of loans and Pell Grants, many individuals still shy away from returning to school due to the financial burden. Our students are drawn to us due to the flexible, convenient schedule. Our model allows more Kansans to further their education while maintaining their personal responsibilities. Our students don't just leave with a piece of paper, but certifications that allow them to work in the field day one, some even before that. In closing, I'll leave you with this. We truly believe that WTI is the Promise Act and that our students deserve the Promise Act. Everything poured into this bill is what we do every day and what our students have done for the past 70 years. I urge you to support Senate Bill 44, not only for the Kansas economy, but for the people that make it what it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. You hit almost exactly 0. Questions for our conferee? Representative Pishning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Jenna, thank you for your presentation. This is a question that I should have asked also for the welding program, but and I appreciate the fact that we want to attract workers into the state. We also want to train them within the state as far as that goes. But your experience and your track record, how many of them are actually staying in the state once they receive whatever certificate or whatever appropriate form that's in when they leave your school?
Yes, thank you, committee member. To be honest, 95% of our students stay. We don't attract a lot of out-of-state because we don't have dorms, we don't have sports programs and things like that. So majority of our students are coming from the Wichita area. And we are verifying every single employment with verification forms. So we know exactly where our students are going, and we have that. And so a very, very high percentage stay in the state.
And then, Madam Chair, with your permission, a follow-up question. And we know the welding program is successful, and I know that back in Southwest Kansas too, where we have a welding program. But what would be the top attraction to WTI as far as people wanting to get into a career of some sort?
Great question. We're quick. Most of our programs are 12 months and under. So we get you in, we get you trained. You're going to be taking your certifications while you're in school. So if you're going into our heating, air conditioning, or refrigeration program, you're taking your EPA while you're a student. You're taking your building science principal certification while you're a student. Medical assisting, you're taking that while you're a student. That way, we are getting you out working. And most people nowadays, they want something fast and something that gets them a paycheck.
Questions from anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
What I have remaining are proponent written testimony from William Wilk with the Kansas Chamber, and also from Kylie Childs. Kylie, yours was not clear if it was in person or online. Is Kylie here? All right, then we are going to assume that that was written only. Then we will move, last call for anyone I might have overlooked. All right, then we are going to move to neutral, and we are going to go to Vice President Frisbee. Welcome back.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. Elaine Frisbee with the Board of Regents. Here to talk about Senate Bill 44. I'll start with responding, I think it was Representative Schreiber who asked about a number of awards. The Promise Scholarship Act is one of 22 state scholarship programs that we administer for the legislature. In academic year 2024, 2,654 students received aid in the Promise Scholarship Act. And in 2023, it was 1,843 students. We are here today as neutral. There are, of course, two things in this bill that have been mentioned before, both of which potentially expand the scope of the program, and that is the crux of our neutrality, if you will. Would just want to make clear for the members and legislators to understand when you have a service scholarship such as this. So if you think of the 2,654 people who received an award last year, our staff will have to do 2 years of living and working verification for every one of those students. And so that creates a lot of back office work for us. That is not work that the schools do. That is our obligation under the law. That is a lot of administrative work for us. We'll leave it at that. This is our most complicated program, up there with the Hero Scholarship. It is a last dollar program. I believe both the Missouri and Nebraska programs are also. I believe the Nebraska program does not have a service requirement. So you receive a grant and you get to go to school, and then you don't have that reporting back to Nebraska. With the volume of activity that this bill proposes, it is a little problematic for us to manage. We have one person who this is a portion of her job, so would just voice our concern about our ability to handle if there's a big increase in volume. The bill, of course, increasing the cap on the appropriation in and of itself doesn't provide us any additional more money. And so as we are now seeing an uptake in interest in the program, very happy to see it succeed and have impactful awards for students, but have concern that when a student calls or a school calls and we're trying to sort things out for any one individual person, our ability to respond quickly to those questions diminishes with that scale. We have made pleas to the legislature in the 2 past years related to the escalation in the volume of our programs with the addition of some new programs, and have not yet had success in garnering any more support more recently. So just put that pitch out there again, and would be happy to answer any questions if you have any about the program.
Thank you, Representative McNorton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Frisbee, we hit the limit last year, is what I'm told. How about in the previous years? How close have we come? Have we hit that limit in the past 5? Where have we been in the past 5 years, roughly?
Thank you for that question, Madam Chair. In the program, I think Revisor Long referenced, the program was first created in 2021. And at that point in time, the pandemic was still rather affecting our enrollments. And the timing of when the bill took effect, or when we could get the word out to financial aid counselors and high school counselors, and then get the word out to students and families, there was a lag in uptake in the program. That then generated some unspent money that carried over to the next year, and again into the next year. So we have, to some degree, been living off past year's unspent funds, and that has helped carry us through this uptake. But we are mindful that we are spending that down, and so trying to manage the amount of funding we do have available, our margin of error is diminishing. So we've been very closely monitoring our amount available. But $10 million has been our annual appropriation.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Additional question, you just got answered. Representative Brantley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here today. I just have a question. Does KBOR process and track any other scholarships other than this one?
If I may, Madam
Yes,
Chair,
you may.
yes, we do. We have the Osteopathic Service Scholarship, the Teacher Service Scholarship, the Nursing Service Scholarship.
Can I ask a follow-up?
The Emerge and National Guard tuition assistance programs, the Promise. I'm missing 1 or 2 others. Yes, I think we have 8 total.
You may.
So of all those scholarships, which one takes the most time?
If I may, Madam Chair,
Yes,
this
you may.
is the one that would take the most time per person because it is last dollar. So when a student enrolls, the school will verify their eligibility. They enroll. There is an account for that student at the school. Of course, we never send money to a student. We send the money to the institution. The amount we send then is applied to that student's account. If they then must go and purchase a book or course materials, then the amount of the award has to be adjusted. And so financial aid staff at the institutions have to log into our system and add those extra costs in to make sure we get that student's account fully updated. So when it's a last dollar, that means the student must fill out the federal free application for financial aid. That has not gone so well the past year. Hoping for some improvements in that process with the U.S. Department of Ed this year and again in the coming years. They totally upended and changed their process, and it didn't go very well. A bit of a fiasco, honestly. So hoping that that improves for students so that they can get that done. But it does create, it's referred to as last dollar, but honestly it's last penny, because you buy a book or you buy materials, there's sales tax, and we're chasing pennies sometimes with the schools.
Representative McNorton, and then Schmoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Ms. Frisbee, can you explain that last dollar? The way I understand it is as a student goes to school, they get a scholarship, they got some FAFSA money. So it's what's left that's not covered is what the scholarship will cover. Am I correct there? Is that right?
Yes, Representative McNorton, that is correct. So if a student, for example, is Pell eligible, they are a low-income student, they qualify, when they fill out their federal form for financial aid, they qualify for Pell, then whatever Pell they have available is applied first. They might have other scholarships as well, and this is where we run into some issues for some of our programs. The nursing service scholarship could be used for someone in healthcare, and so could this one. So there is a bit of an overlap in some cases, not entirely. And if they may have a grant from a private foundation or a family member, whatever it might be. So whatever they're contributing and whatever other grants and scholarships they get, then we fill in that last gap. And that's where the complications can sometimes come in. The concept being, in total, the student does not have cost, at least for tuition, fees, and books and course materials.
You're welcome. Representative Schmoy, then Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so like a week ago, you were in here, and if I remember correctly, we were wanting to consolidate a bunch of different programs or scholarships under your roof. And if I'm hearing you correctly on this one, it will add too much paperwork and back-end work. So just help me tie this together.
Mrs. Frisbee, go ahead.
Thank you for that question. So last week, we were discussing the interest rate that's applied when you go into repayment. So for Promise Act students, as it is now, the interest rate that they are required to pay back if they go into repayment is the federal plus rate, which is where this committee ended up in the bill that you enacted, that you passed. So that piece, I don't believe, changes in this bill. So that at least helps, that bill last week helps us with the calculation of all the interest rates across the different scholarships, service scholarships that we must monitor. This bill expands the potential volume of students that we're serving, and that's our concern.
A follow-up, if I may?
Yes, you may.
All right, thank you. So we weren't moving some of the other programs to be housed under that bill, that weren't previously?
Those programs are under us, and they'll still be under us.
Okay.
Yes, that part did not change.
All right, thank you.
Representative Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Okay, I'm just going to come at this from a little bit different angle, but one of the former conferees said 62% stay in the program, which means 38% do not. If they do not and they've accepted this money, that means they can no longer get any federal or state help after that if they don't stay, and that'd be all on their own dime? Is that correct?
What happens then, Representative, is they go into repayment.
They do
So
have.
then that obligation, whatever they receive from us, they will have to pay back.
Okay. So, and then they had 78% placement of the 62%. So we're only really looking at a success rate of maybe 50% from the ones that start at the very beginning and come down. But are we looking at people that if they didn't have this degree, maybe on federal assistance and state assistance? So this is a good program because it keeps the whole percent not being on federal assist. Am I looking at that correctly?
Yes, thank you for that question. We very much understand, and we have all the data in the world that we can provide about the impact of acquiring a post-secondary credential for anyone. A post-secondary credential can be anything from a short-term certificate all the way up to a PhD. We offer the whole gamut at every potential price range. This program, for our students, what we have seen is, I believe, out of the several thousand people who have been in the program over these few years, I believe we have 180 who are currently in repayment. And when we look at data, we do have an opportunity to match our student graduates. So when they leave our programs, we know whether they stay and live and work in Kansas. We know that they are working because we can match to KDOL data and Missouri data. And so we can see that there is a definite boon to a person's income and well-being when they have some kind of credential.
All right, thank you, everybody. Last call for questions. Vice President Frisbee, thank you for being with us today. I show no other neutral testimony or opponent, written or oral. Oh, Heather, I'm sorry. Somehow I missed you. I apologize for that.
Fine.
Please identify yourself for the minutes.
I'm Heather Morgan. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas Community College Association. We are appearing neutral on this bill today only because of the appropriation. So the Senate amendments that went on the bill were an improvement from the bill as introduced. This is my 5th year, I think, in this committee talking about the Promise Scholarship. This is the only state scholarship for the 2-year sector colleges. This scholarship being a last dollar scholarship means that every state taxpayer dollar is not going back into a student's pocket to buy whatever they want, as some refunds are with federal Pell Grants. This means that it is going onto their account. You're not over scholarshiping anyone. The other thing that hasn't been mentioned today is, as we're adding additional private schools into the bill, currently the law is that the private schools are reimbursed at the average of the community and technical college tuition. So private schools generally have higher tuition rates. So whether it's the Kansas Independent Colleges represented by Matt Lindsay or the private colleges today, they would be reimbursed at the average of the community and technical college rate. So while we appreciate that the cap has been raised to $15 million, we need a $5 million appropriation or we're going to have a wait list of students. This fall, our colleges received an email from the Board of Regents, as Director Frisbee mentioned, that when we are all marketing this scholarship, when we run out of money, it's really problematic. We've got students in the pipeline who are saying, well, all of your costs are going to be covered by the Promise Scholarship, and then if there's not enough money to fund it, that really messes around with students' lives and plans. They might not be able to attend. They may drop out of post-secondary education altogether. So that $5 million cap is one thing, the appropriation is another. The other thing that hasn't been mentioned today is 80% of Kansas community college students are part-time. Part-time students are allowed to get this scholarship, and they have, I think it's 36 months to complete, so there's a little bit of a stacking effect. You have to reserve the money for them to complete their whole degree when they enter, and then they have a period of time to complete. And so that's why it takes a little bit of extra finagling from the Board of Regents to try to balance the appropriation with the limits, with the time period that students have. But this is the most effective scholarship we have. Live and work in Kansas for 2 years. We're very supportive of the scholarship. We're okay with adding some additional people so long as there is additional appropriation to support the Kansas students that we said. And Jason mentioned an out-of-state request maybe for next year. We definitely would be interested in that as we think about the talent pipeline in Kansas. The shortage is we don't have enough workforce. We've got to figure out ways to lure them to Kansas, get them to stay here to enter the Kansas economy. And with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions. Also, in my testimony, I included how many Promise scholarships at each college and each occupation. About 60% of this goes towards healthcare.
Thank you, Heather. Questions for Ms. Morgan? Seeing none, Heather, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here today. Is there any other neutral testimony I might have accidentally overlooked? I did have yours, Heather. I just didn't see it in the right place. All right. And then I have no opponent testimony. Last call. Then the chair will close this hearing. Thank you all very much. And we will move to SB 114. And I forgot to mention to you guys that I use a timer, and it shows you the how much time you have in nice big letters. And we'll be giving everybody 3 minutes again. And but some people seeing a timer in front of them makes them very nervous. So if you would prefer not to see the timer, you are welcome to let me know that. It's always our goal to make people feel welcome. So we are going to begin with the revisor without a timer. And while Jason's walking up, I'm going to introduce Marin King, my intern from Washburn. Marin, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill 114 amends a statute. This is a set of statutes regarding what is referred in the statute as the Activities Association, but what is colloquially and around the state known as the Kansas State High School Activities Association, and the activities that it regulates among the different school districts for competition and sports and other events. The bill amends one statute, and those statutes 72-7121 to authorize non-public and virtual school students to participate in ancillary public school activities, and to make it unlawful for the Kansas State High School Activities Association or school districts to discriminate against such students on the basis of their enrollment status. Currently, the statute as currently written allows these students who are enrolled to participate in activity regulated by the Activities Association, and it's offered by the school district where the student resides. So they reside in a school district, but they're either attending a virtual school or they are at a non-public school. They can participate in these KSHA activities at their resident school district if the school district offers it. What Senate Bill 114 does is change that to also require and authorize the participation of these students in ancillary activities that are ancillary to the activity that they're participating in at the school district. This would include, as mentioned in the bill, pep rallies, award ceremonies, yearbook photos, and other events that are honoring the participants of that activity. So these students would be included in those events at the school district as well. There's also some additional language added on page 3 of the bill, 2 new subsections added to the statute by the bill that explicitly state that students who participate are entitled to all rights and subject to all responsibilities of those students who are participating, regardless of enrollment status, and again, protecting the student from any discrimination by the association of their school district based on their enrollment status. I will also point out that the Senate Committee on Education amended Senate Bill 114 to add some new language on page 2 of the bill, so that students who are enrolled in attending the Kansas Academy of Mathematics and Science, KAMS, can participate in these KSHA-regulated activities on the same basis as the other students under the statute. The bill passed the Senate on a final vote of 32-8, and these changes would go into effect on July 1st of this year, so it would be applicable for next school year. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for Jason? Representative Pishney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one clarification question. Jason, with regard to the CAMs, I know at Fort Hays, they have them on campus. They're in a dormitory. But where would they be able to participate with that? Would it be in Hays, or would it have to be back in their home district?
It's the local school district there in Fort Hays. It's the Hays School District.
Okay, so where they're residing during that school year?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Representative Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So my question is, if Hayes is taking these people and doing extra things, they're not getting the per pupil money, are some of these school districts going to say, this cost us extra, you're putting kids in here, we want extra funds to cover this?
So school districts do not receive any state aid for student participation in KSHA activities. That is just one of the extracurriculars that school districts provide. And so in the CAMS students' case, the local school district is not receiving any additional state funding or any state aid for allowing the students to come and participate in KSHA activities, nor are any other residential school districts for allowing non-public or virtual school students to participate.
That is true, but at the same time, it does cost them money, so that does come out of that per pupil.
Whatever funds that the school district has that is utilizing to pay for the cost of those activities is to pay for the cost of all students who are participating, and so it would include any of these students who are participating.
Thank you.
Representative Schmoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jason. Can a public school in this instance deny somebody? What does that look like? Or do they have to accept anybody that wants to participate?
The statute, the current law, and the students under this would still have to be required to meet the conditions under the statute, which includes compliance with the health requirements, any age and other eligibility requirements that aren't directly tied to academic performance that might be in conflict with this section. They also have to pay any fees that are required for participation. If the school district charges fees to students to participate, these students would have to pay those fees as well. So they have to otherwise comply with those requirements the same as the public school students.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Jason? Representative Schreiber?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jason. What's the enrollment at CAMS? I think it just includes 11th and 12th grade students, but do you know the enrollment?
I believe it is just 11th and 12th grade students, but I'm not sure what their numbers are for this year. We'd have to look that up.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. I think you might have some students coming up that might answer that question for you. Any other questions? Seeing none, Jason, thank you very much. We will move right into testimony. I miscounted how much testimony I have, so I am going to set our time allowed at 2 minutes, and I am going to begin with Bryce Steffen. Bryce, come on up. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Bryce Steffen. I am a Kansas Academy of Math and Science senior and an Ellenwood High School senior. I'm here to ask your support of Senate Bill 114. CAMS is an early college program designated for academically gifted students for STEM-based learning during their 11th and 12th grade years. While at Ellenwood High School as a sophomore, I found myself disappointed while deciding classes. Not because I wasn't in classes I wanted or because my friends weren't in my classes, because they weren't challenging enough. My school is quite small, lacking offer to any honors or AP classes, and offering merely a few dual credit classes. I need something more, I need something different. CAMS was this space. They taught me a lot about this, but there was one huge drawback. I was not allowed to participate in KSHA-regulated activities. This was a major hit to me, for as a freshman and sophomore, I had participated in 3 varsity sports, forensics, and Scholars Bowl. I had even just qualified for the state track and field championship in 4 events. I had to choose between the best possible education or my activities. I ultimately decided to do my activities, do my education. This greatly propelled my future. However, there was something still weighing on me. Could I really not do sports? So I researched. I went through as much legislation as I can. I read all the rule books. And to my surprise, there was nowhere that said I was not allowed to participate in KSHA-regulated activities. So we sought approval to participate in these activities. However, KSHA denied this. I'm here today to ask for your support that CAM students can participate in KSHA-regulated activities just as any other student. I would like for you to pass this bill in a manner that would make it effective immediately so I could participate in postseason and thus gain the opportunity to earn my spot at the Kansas State Track and Field Championship later this year. I will stand for questions.
Thank you. Questions for our conferee? Representative Brantley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here, Bryce. What is your goal and aspiration for beyond CAMS?
So my goal is to become a practicing physician in rural Kansas. I am from a small town and thus would like to return to a small town. I have a great interest in medicine, so I would like to continue doing this where I'm from. I'm currently participating in several activities that will pursue that goal.
Thank you.
Representative Schreiber, did you want to ask this young man your question about how many students at CAMS?
Thank you. Would you happen to,
Per the state legislator, we can have a max of 80 between the two classes, 40 each. I think we have just under that at roughly 75, give or take a few, but it is just under 80.
thank you, and thank you for being here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And would you consider that enough people to form teams yourselves at your school?
Yes, I also believe we could participate in individual sports such as swimming, track, golf, or other activities, but I do believe we could form teams to do that. We're already involved in intramural activities, but as you know, I feel like that's not as the same as CASA regulated activities.
And that's what I meant. I think the number of students you have would make it hard to field like a football team out of 80 students. I think you guys have a unique situation. Representative Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate your drive and motivation, Bryce, and I think you'll be a great physician. Question, do you know what your legal residency status is?
I am enrolled in Ellenwood High School, and I live at Ellenwood in Barton County.
Okay, so you are not technically a resident of the Hayes School District,
I
or?
do not believe so, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for our conferee? Bryce, you did very, very well. I know I am missing, and you may be seated. It's hard to come look at all of us adults, and I always respect when you guys do that. I am missing your classmates' testimony, and so I apologize that I am drawing a blank on your name. So we'll go with Gus next. I'm so sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I apologize. Gus, welcome to committee.
Thank you. Hello, Madam Chair and committee members. I would like to first off take the opportunity to thank you for allowing me to present here in front of you today. I stand before you to seek your support for Senate Bill 114. In my sophomore year of high school, I excelled in track and field, and I just barely missed out on state for long jump. Before joining CAMS, I learned that sports would no longer be an option for me. This made the decision to join the program extremely difficult for me, as going to state in track and field was a really big goal of mine. However, I knew what the right choice was for me, and I decided to pursue my education and forego my chance at going to state for track and field. Today, I stand before you, like I said, to seek your support for Senate Bill 114. This would allow me and other early college program attendees to compete in postseason activities and give us a fair and equal chance to compete and practice our sport. This includes all sports and CASA activities and would allow us to showcase our talents and, I'd also like to ask that this bill be rendered effective immediately. This would allow me and Bryce and the other camp students to participate in state athletics this coming spring. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for our conferee? Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Gus, for being here. The classes that you take at CAMS, are those college-level classes or college credit type classes?
Yes, sir. So they're college-level classes. They're the same classes that all the other college attendees are taking, except they count for college credit and high school credit. So they're dual credit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome. And Gus, please remind me, chronologically, what year is this for you, junior or senior?
This is my junior year.
Junior year, thank you.
Yes,
Representative Steele?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gus, thank you so much for sharing your testimony. I am most impressed that both of you in the conferee before you had your speeches memorized. That shows how much you care about what you're standing here for today, so kudos to you. What do you aspire to do after CAMS?
I'm majoring in computer science. I'm not sure where I'm going to take that or what I'm going to do with that, but I also think I may continue on to a different school to pursue engineering. But I haven't totally figured it out yet, but we'll see where I go.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Brantley, and then McNorton. Oh, Representative Brantley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Gus, for being here today. I want to ask you a little bit about CAMS. Can you tell us what the requirements are, maybe for grades, and just, is it a rigid program that's very demanding? Thank you.
Sure. So to get into the program, you have to have an ACT score of above, I believe it's 23. And you also have to go through sort of an interview process and meet with some of the directors, and you have to write a couple essays and things like that. And once you get accepted into the program, I believe you have to keep above, I think it's a 3.0 GPA to stay in the program. And then otherwise you have to I believe you have to write some sort of letter to as how you're going to work harder the next semester if you get below that 3.0. But I believe the 3.0 is to stay in the program.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Now you do. You changed your mind. Representative McNorton.
So you guys stay in a dormitory or something during the week and then go home on the weekend, I'm assuming, or something along that line? Or what's your normal week like for that?
We're required to stay in the dorms over the whole semester, and you can request to sign out at night or get a night away form so you can go stay with your parents or go do activities if you want. And then you're also allowed to leave over spring break, winter break, and fall break.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you very much. Gus, you may have a seat. Thank you for being with us today. I have Chad Meitner as written only, but in case that's mistaken, I'd like to make sure that I'm correct. Looks like we don't have Chad here. Is there anybody else here who had submitted written testimony who wanted to speak about the CAMS portion of the bill before we move to the other portion? And I see Mr. Nye is ready to go, but I just wanted to, thought it kind of made logical sense to deal with each half of the bill separately. Seeing none, we will move on to that, and we will go ahead and go with Mr. Nye.
As quick as I was to pop up, we did this in Senate. Would you be willing to hear from my clients first? Kira Richardson and Audrey Richardson to tell the story, and then I'll talk about the statute.
Yes, you may. Welcome, Kira. You may begin.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Aubrey Richardson, and I'm from Sharon Springs, Kansas. I have been homeschooled in Wallace County my entire life. Last school year, my senior year, I got the privilege to play sports in my own hometown for Wallace County High School USG 241, thanks to Senate Bill 113. I was so excited because for the first time, I would finally get to play sports with friends I have known my entire life. My team had a lot of success. We placed third in both volleyball and basketball at the Class 1A Division II state tournaments. I also had the opportunity to compete along with many of my other teammates at the state track and field meet in Wichita, Kansas, making the podium in high jump. I was also honored to be chosen for various awards from our league and also from the Kansas State High School Activities Association. However, when our annual senior night came, the school refused to let me participate. I was not allowed to walk across the very floor I had just finished playing on with the other seniors, many of whom were my teammates. Though many of my teammates went to bat for me, asking the school to allow me to participate, the school had no interest in recognizing me in front of the very community I was representing in uniform. When the activities banquet came in the spring, my coaches notified the school administration that we, myself, and the other homeschooled athletes had lettered in our appropriate sports. However, the administration made the decision not to allow homeschoolers the opportunity to letter in any sport, though they did not communicate that decision to us at that time. We learned of this at the banquet when we were not mentioned and not allowed to be in the pictures for these awards. This bill will protect non-public school students who have a legal right to participate in these activities from discrimination. I kindly ask for your support of this bill to ensure that all students in the district can safely participate without fear of unnecessary exclusion and discrimination.
Kara, you are out of time, but I think you were at the end. Thank you so much, and I assume that you would like to stand for questions? No? Okay. I never force anybody to do questions. I will let you off the hot seat, but I always like to, because it's kind of an extra way to get part of your story in. So, but if you don't want to do it, I know it's not fun for everybody. That's okay. Thank you for being with us today. Just for the acknowledgement of the joke, that is her attorney who told her to take the fifth. Aubrey Richardson, you are next.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is actually Kira Richardson. Flip that around. That's okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. My husband and I have homeschooled our children in Wallace County for 14 years, and I've lived in Wallace County my entire life. I graduated from Wallace County and had the pleasure of competing in all 3 sports that were offered for all 4 years of high school. In 2023, with the passage of SB 113, our homeschool children were now eligible to play at the local high school, USD 241. And in rural Kansas, sometimes we would have to drive 3 to 5 hours. That might be difficult for some of you who are not from the western side of the state. But driving 3 to 5 hours to compete was very difficult for our family. So this was a good move for us. So we were excited. My children had the same responsibilities as enrolled students in following the district's rules and policies. I'm not going to reiterate what my daughter has explained in her testimony about the discrimination that the homeschool children faced at our district. I would just like to spend my time to maybe explain why I believe this bill is necessary. It was suggested that KSHA could have resolved the situation if they would have known about it and been able to talk to the district, but the district was very careful to exclude homeschool students in only the activities that they had jurisdiction over. So KSHA would not have had any, they could have given advice, but the activities like lettering and honor ceremonies were strictly under the purview of the district. I had a chance to talk to Mr. Feflick, and he actually did have a conversation with the district explaining what he said in his testimony on the Senate side, that it would be out of step with the philosophy and intent to discriminate against non-public school students, and that once a uniform went on, there was to be no difference in how the athletes are treated. But even after this clarification by KSHA, and with potential legal action being taken against the school, 2 of 6 board members still voted to continue the discriminatory policies. One board member even stated that they had complied with SB 113 in allowing homeschoolers to participate and that was good enough. Local governance is good, but I think it should be standardly agreed upon that school boards should not be allowed to discriminate against students just because they share a district address and can secure enough votes to do so. So I would like to ask you to support SB 114, which I believe is necessary to ensure that the spirit of the law of SB 113 is followed, not just the letter of the law. And that all district students, regardless of their enrollment status, are free to participate in KSHA activities like all the other students. Thank you for your time, and I will stand for questions.
Questions for our conferee? Oh, I did something wrong with my timer, and it didn't time. Representative Ruiz.
Madam Chair, thank you for being here this afternoon. What made you decide to homeschool your kids?
Homeschool my children?
Yeah.
Oh, a variety of reasons. I love the freedom to choose what my children learn. We have so much free time, and we love Jesus. And so he's infused in everything we do.
Did you ever think to send them to public school?
I myself went to public schools.
I know you did, but your kids.
Oh, have I ever thought of sending them? Yeah. No.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Representative Ballard?
Was this ever explained to you when they were playing what the exceptions would be?
What exceptions? I'm not sure you understand.
Not allowed to go to
no.
the banquet, or that was never?
The senior night thing was like she was excluded from senior night. That was, they called a special board meeting, I think, 2 or 3 days before. So we were notified 2 to 3 days before that. But the lettering was never, we were not notified of that.
Okay. And what was your immediate reaction to that, and who did you speak with?
For the senior night, we spoke to the principal, and actually for the lettering, a school board member inquired on our behalf So she did most of the communicating with the administration on that.
Did anyone ever speak with the superintendent? I ask all these questions because I'm from Lawrence, Kansas, but I was on the school board for 8 years and president 2 of those years. And there was a procedure we had, and I'm trying to figure out, did the superintendent interact at all?
Not with us directly, but with the school board member who communicated to us.
As a parent, I would have been pretty upset.
I was.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What did the coach have to say about this exclusion?
Actually, the coaches knew nothing of it. They went to the activities banquet completely unaware. They had turned our children, the letter winners, they had turned all of them in, including homeschool students. It was an administrative decision that was not even communicated to the coaches.
Thank you.
Additional questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for being here. I know it's not easy to talk about times when we don't feel like we're treated well, and I appreciate you taking a stand. Josh, were you going to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. So I found out about this last fall, and we started looking at different legal avenues, so to speak, to approach the school board. We did send a demand letter in February. That's attached as Exhibit A to my testimony. And prior to that, we had, because you guys were convening, we just decided to go ahead and try to clarify this in law. So the question that I want to address in my testimony is really, is it necessary? Can KSHA be the enforcement? Can school districts? It should be obvious, but the way that this went down at the local level, I think tells you why it is necessary. And that's that this particular school board and their attorney actually quoted, or at least the school board quoted SB 113 as somehow prohibiting them from giving lettering, or they're going to only allow the things that are in statute for these people these kids to receive. And so even though Audrey received state and league awards, the district's saying because that's not in the statute, district stuff is not in the statute, I don't know if they convinced themselves that they couldn't. I think that they're maybe the only school district across the state that did this, but because of kind of the unconscionable nature of this fact pattern, I think it's sometimes just fine to say it's okay to be non-discriminatory in statute. And so that's really where this came from. I wrote the bill language, and then when we sent the demand letter about Pierce Richardson, who's in the audience today, Audrey's younger brother, he's a senior this year and was able actually to participate in senior night. And you can actually see that picture on my testimony most recently as a result of these proceedings. And then the CAMS thing popped up after. So
Josh, you
these
are
are
out of
somewhat,
time.
yeah.
Would you like to stand for questions?
I'm happy to.
Before we do, I do think that you were in a point that the committee does need to know. So their school district did change their policy as a result of the legal communication from Mr. Nye, their attorney. However, I did choose to continue to work the bill or have a hearing and plan to work because this has now occurred in another school district. So I just think that's very important for the committee to know. I did mention I would have amendments. So this is not a problem everywhere, and in fact, we also have the opposite of experience of some districts include these students in their prom and their homecoming, and they've been very welcoming. So given the point that Mr. Nye just made, I do have an amendment that clarifies they can continue to do those things. So I just wanted to mention that to you, but now I'll turn it over for questions to Mr. Nye. Do I have questions? Representative Wolf.
Thank you very much. This can be for Jason or you, and I don't know, this is just something I just thought of. Being from a small school district myself, I know that KSHA is very picky about enrollment numbers, whether you're a class 1A, 2A, 3A, for 8-man football and all that stuff. If you had like 80 people that are eligible that could come in, Is that going to be a problem? Have we addressed that where, like, there's been times we were 3A by 1 or 2 students, and then we got moved back down to 2A? Does any of that apply? Has anyone thought of any of that?
I think that that's a question for Keisha, probably. The questions I would have on top of that are, did Senate Bill 113 change that? Because if the idea is, once 113 opened up a pool of recruiting pool of all resident students in your county or in your school district, so to speak, does that potential for recruiting those people now affect 3A, 4A, or is it only when they start enrolling? That's the issue, is the recruitment pool versus what other would, enrolled. And that CAM's at the same point. I don't think all 75 kids are going to participate in these sports, but does that somehow affect the pool? So that'd be a question for Keisha.
That's a very interesting question. I've asked research to look up what size district Hayes is, because I suspect they're larger and that may be less of an issue, but they're a 5A, so I think that student pool probably doesn't come into impact, but I don't know for sure where they are on the edge, so that's an interesting question. Any other questions for Representative Nye? Okay, and by the way, if anyone is confused, we've had some conferees say Senate Bill 113, and we are 114.
113 was the 2023 law that allowed these to.
Thank you. Somebody texted me asking for clarification, so I appreciate that. I show no other proponents. And I do have Chad Meitner that I mentioned before as a proponent written. Brittany Jones, I think I show you as written only, and I don't see her here, so I think that is true. All right, and then we move on. I have no neutral, and if you were confused because you looked through the Senate testimony and Keisha was neutral, and Keisha is now an opponent, I think the addition of CAMs changed their position. Is Bill I always say it wrong, I'm so sorry. Bill, please come up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We appreciate the opportunity to be with you, and thank you, committee members, for your attention to this very important piece of legislation. The Kansas State High School Activities Association did provide written testimony congruent to the comments that I'll make now, but a little bit different. I provide a lot of data in that, some numbers for you to reflect upon, and that's just simply for your knowledge, and I don't need to run through that right now. We're an association of member schools. We serve those member schools by adopting rules that they write themselves, they vote on themselves, and they choose to follow. They do that to create a level playing field. A level playing field allows our championships at the end of the season to be meaningful and significant for the student athletes and the school communities that they're participating in. Just like you, those governing boards spend a lot of time in preparation for adopting the rules that we follow for eligibility, for postseason participation, a variety of different things all go into that. Certainly, we know the spirit of the law or the spirit of a rule is often hard to codify, so we do spend a lot of time providing interpretations. In regards to the first half of Senate Bill 114, we stand neutral, only simply because we agree with the philosophy, but don't believe it is necessary. If in your wisdom you believe so, we fully support that. We already support that. In fact, we have been providing guidance to our member schools since it was adopted to follow that through. But in regards to the amended version, which came after the initial hearing, we do stand opposed because it creates an unfair advantage for Hayes High School. Hayes High School would be the only school in the Western Athletic Conference, their league, that would have access to participation from these 80 kids. The only 5A school that would have access to these kids. The only Kansas school that would have access to these students. 113, passed on July 1st of 2023, is different because all schools have access to the homeschool community, to the non-public school students, because they're residents in their community. So
Bill,
with that.
You're out of time, I'm
Yes, ma'am.
sorry. Would you like to answer Representative Wolf's question about would the number of students at CAMS move up and down the borderline for what A category Hayes would fall in?
Yes, ma'am. Certainly. Hayes is a 5A school. We tend to find the gap a little bit larger in our 5A, 4A, 5A, 6A schools, but sometimes it is as few as one. Sometimes there's a tie, and we go back to the previous year's enrollment. Right now, Hayes is comfortably in the middle of 5A, so even the addition of 80 students would not change them. It does provide displacement because kids that are attending school at Hayes High School would now lose roster spots, starting positions, and playing time. But in terms of their actual classification, it would not put them over the top of the number for bottom of 6A.
Okay, we will go to Representative Steele, then Hill, Pishney, and Brantley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. I'm just struggling to understand a few things. When I read your mission statement of KSHA, you talk about that your association is strengthened by equity and diversity. And then you continue on, you have several bullet points in your mission statement on honesty, integrity, and sportsmanship. And I just, if you can help me, how is your opponent testimony that doesn't seem to align with what your mission is?
Certainly happy to do that. I could spend hours on every one of those topics because they're fundamental to school-based activities. There's a difference between education-based activities and club activities or recreational activities where they're open to all kids that are enrolled in that school. Our schools choose to join the Kansas State High School Activities Association. When they do so, they choose to follow the rules that are adopted by the association. Those rules allow for fair play. They allow equal access to students in their school that are attending to be able to participate. So in regards to maintaining that, until 113 came along 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago, it was just the students that were actually enrolled in attending that school that represented those schools on their teams and their activities. Now, we have school community type programs where there are some kids that are connected by geography to those programs. But we've never had kids from out of district eligible at one of our member schools other than those that are enrolled and attending, like foreign exchange students.
May I ask a follow-up?
Quickly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is it true that homeschool students must still meet the roster? So they could try out and not make a spot?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And I could try out as a student and not make a spot in a school, regardless if there was homeschool kids there or not?
Yes, ma'am. For those, some of our activities are cut sports, if you would, where they're competitive in nature to make the roster. Others are open. I coached cross country for years at Southeast High School, and I would take anybody that could run those 2 miles back in the day, and we'd move them along. Other activities, basketball, you're going to cut down to 12 per team.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Representative Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Fafa, for coming and visiting with us. And this is an interesting classification of a non-resident student attending school within the confines of a school district. Are there other examples of this across the state?
There are not.
Are you absolutely sure of that?
That's my understanding. That are not attending that particular school yet representing them. I am not aware of those. You might have one in mind, but I'm not thinking of them.
No, I'm trying to think, because I was sitting here thinking about that, and it made me think of virtual schools. And so don't we have, I mean, aren't virtual school students eligible to participate in KSHA activities?
Yes, sir. in the school community where they reside. So if I am a student in Topeka, Kansas, and I go to Mays Virtual, I'm eligible in Topeka, Kansas. I'm not eligible in Mays.
Run that by me one more time, because I'm
If
a
I
little
live
slow.
in Topeka and I live within the Topeka High School school district, I have eligibility as a non-public school student, as a virtual student in this case, at my home school when I meet the eligibility requirements that are put forth. I would not be eligible at Mays High School, even though I'm taking Mays curriculum through the Mays virtual program, and I'm undergoing all of my classes and instructors are paid by Mays, but I'm not really a student in their school community, so I cannot be eligible at Mays.
So what this really boils down to is these children are, I'm going to call them young people because they're not really children. So these young people are not legal residents of the school district that they live in. If they were legal residents where they're attending school, and it's essentially a boarding school, then they would be eligible to play in the Hayes School District. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That would be correct. But a boarding school we have one boarding school, Mar Hill Mountain Academy. Those students go to Mar Hill Mountain Academy. They don't go to a different school. They attend classes at Mar Hill. So that's seems like a fine line of a difference, but to me, it's a pretty bright line difference that, I'm going to school, I'm connected to that community there. Other kids that are virtual kids are connected through their geography. They're connected because they're attending Fort Hays State, but not to Hays High. We felt like potentially that sweet spot would be an approved school so they can have all of the opportunities. 90% of our competitions are regular season. Approved schools compete against member schools during the regular season. Only piece they miss would be that postseason assignment.
There may be a couple residential schools that you missed. Mars is not the only one. We have a school for the deaf and a school for the blind in the state of Kansas, too.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
They shouldn't be overlooked.
And they have been in and out of membership or approved school status. They currently are approved school status. So in our membership, they do not.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Pishney?
Madam Chair, if you would please allow me 2 questions.
Yes,
First
sir.
of all, we're talking about 80 students in CAMS approximately. Have they been polled as far as how many would be interested in being in these extracurricular activities? Because I hear 2 young men here that are interested in track, but I can't imagine that all 80 are interested in track, for example, that it would bump that number up so much in that one activity. Have they been polled to see who's interested in what?
No, sir, because we didn't know that CAMS was added until late last week. In fact, Hays High School didn't know that they were added. The superintendent, the principal, the AD want to be treated like everybody else. And when I met with them late last week, their comment was, we have no idea what the impact would be. Their concern is for the kids in their building and whether or not they'll be able to participate. There are some funding concerns. I think you mentioned those before, but their primary concern was their own students and being like all the other schools.
Okay. Well, and they're going to have a bigger building pretty soon. So.
Beautiful. Yes, it's going to be beautiful.
But second part of my question is, there's also Thomas More Prep, or TMP Marion, in Hays. Would they not be eligible to go to either of those 2 schools?
The way the statute is written, it says that they would be eligible at the school district serving that particular location. None of the virtual students, none of the homeschool students or non-public school students are eligible at other private schools, only at the public school. We try to have that one-to-one, otherwise it becomes a recruiting nightmare and we end up with, kids choosing schools for the wrong reasons and not honoring a commitment to go to a school. So loyalty still matters, and that would be out the window.
I understand that. If I could, Madam Chair.
Yes, you may.
I understand that, and I have a real issue with the recruiting aspect that you've just alluded to. However, Hays is in a unique position where TMP, I believe, is 4A or 3A, I can't remember, but they're a lesser class than Hayes High as far as numbers of students. And it would give the opportunity, if they were if they were able to be a receiving school, for the students to pick one or the other and not overload either of the schools. And secondly, to that, TMP is part of KSHA because they compete in all the KSHA activities. So I respect the recruiting piece of it, and I don't want to bother that part of it. But I think Hayes is in a unique position with those two schools, is my point.
Representative Brantley?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here today. My representative from Garden City kind of has my question about the concern about the school. And I believe it has to be an accredited school, correct?
Correct.
And I believe TMP, Thomas More Prep, is an accredited school. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So they could actually choose and participate in either one of those within that area?
Not the way the legislation is written currently.
Bill,
and-
do you mind if I let Jason answer that question? Because I think there is confusion amongst the committee, and I think hearing, but don't go far.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee. The statute as a current law and in the bill is a student who meets the requirements is permitted to participate in any activities offered by a school district in which the student resides.
Thank you, and I think that's an important thing to understand because I would be highly uncomfortable with the legislature saying to a private school who is privately funded, you must take one of our students. There's a difference there. Bill, did you want to add any more to that?
No, that's what I was going to say. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Did you have another question, Representative Brantley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my other thought was, we have two students here that are in CAMS. One lives in Hayes, from what I understand, and one lives in Ellenwood. Are they allowed to participate in their home district?
The association has said no historically, and the reason why is that Ellenwood, fairly easy commute. Hayes, an even easier commute if you happen to be in the Hayes district. But from my alma mater, Wichita Southeast, kids aren't going home for practice every day. So we turn our level playing field into a slanted one way or the other, where some schools would have an advantage, others would not. So anybody that's further away than probably 40, 50 miles is not going to make that commute daily for team practices or individual workouts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is there something in the statute about the commute to practice and such that I'm missing?
No, ma'am, but it would be, our school teams practice every day, so the expectation of all teams would be students attend practice, part of a team.
So is that your opinion or statute?
No, it's my opinion, and it's common practice from our athletic teams, our debate teams, our speech and forensics, as well as a Scholars Bowl.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, Bill, I'm going next for question. So we kind of are getting to the point of where my questions are. I think I understand that you're trying to keep a level playing field, and I don't think that's an inappropriate desire on your part. But then when you get to the practicalities, we have a very unique situation that the students at CAMS could be a great distance or a semi-great distance from their home district. And so your position excludes students. And so when we're trying to balance a level playing field and including students in activities because we think they're important and good for our young people, is there any other solution you have that we may not have considered that would allow these young people to participate in sports?
Absolutely. I think I've laid out two, and that's part of the written testimony. One is for CAMS to become a member of the Kansas State High School Activities Association, follow all the rules and regulations of all our other member schools. It would be a unique relationship because they're different than our other schools, but all of our schools are unique. The other option is to participate as an approved school, which they're currently doing. They've been an approved school on and off over the years. They've been in Scholars Bowl, they've been in speech or debate, but now they've got some kids participating in track and field. So that allows those opportunities through the regular season. Approved schools don't follow all the same rules as our member schools. So a big difference would probably be along coaching or along travel or along, number of competitions that are provided or season of sport beginning and ending.
So back to exclusion, though, those children would not be eligible for postseason.
And as a member school, yes, ma'am, they would be. They'd be a member school just like everybody else. We have mentioned, well, are there enough for a team? 75 kids. There are 62 schools in Kansas that have enrollment of 75 or below.
If they're approved but not a member, do they get postseason?
They would not.
Okay, so because you mentioned one of your solutions was approved, and I have heartburn over excluding. I think we try to be inclusionary to an extent possible. So thank you for answering my questions. I'll go to Representative Chauncey and then Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, I guess. You were talking about eligibility for their home district, and you're saying like some of the schools like in Wichita Southeast and whatever, but just looking back on that, I mean, if a parent's willing to take them to those particular activities, I know some of them you say aren't feasible, but I know with my daughter and playing traveling basketball, we'd go 2 hours for practices. So is that something we've looked at to give them the eligibility at their home school or their home district?
Certainly the state has shrunk in my 40 years in education, and people travel a lot more for athletics. It does become quite cumbersome when it's a daily type activity for a team activity. Individual might be a lot easier to do in swimming or golf or tennis, where you can work out on your own or in a smaller group. But again, that would be another option as well as back at their local district.
Representative Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging me. I was doing pretty good on this until Jason read the bill again. And the way you read that, you said that they would be eligible to participate in the district in which they reside. Is that what you said?
Jason.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, yes, these students under the statute are eligible to participate in activities that are offered by the school district in which the student resides.
So would you define reside?
Yep, go ahead.
Typically, residence is where you normally would lay your head at night, is a general understood definition of residence.
So am I to correct the young man that stood up and said that Hayes is not their legal residence?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, residence can mean different things in different contexts. There is a legal residence of where the student probably has his legal residence, where his parents' home is, but there could be a separate residence determination for purposes of KSHA participation.
Okay, so you're telling me that KSHA can determine residency?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, KSHA has its own set of rules that are agreed to by its member schools.
Thank you very much.
Any additional questions? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking down the list of schools that are under that 75, and I see Axtell High, go Eagles, and I know they have a very robust sports programs. They send kids to school, like college, on athletic scholarships, and they're pretty far down the list. Like, is that typical of those smaller schools that they have a robust program?
We have outstanding kids in all 349 high schools that are members of our association, and many of those go on to play Division I or professionally. You have more of those at the larger schools simply because you have more students. There's 60,000 students in our 5A and 6A schools, and in our 1A schools, there's maybe 10,000 total. So you just don't have the number, so you're not going to have the frequency.
Okay, thanks. Okay. So that was a very interesting question, which inspired us to try to see if we could find an answer very quickly, which is how is CAMS funded and how big is their staff? Because they're funded through, we believe, and staff is checking, through property tax. I'm sorry, through appropriation and not property tax. So I think it's not a typical school in the sense that you have a lot of staff and you have an ability to hire. I think it's much more scaled down since the students are focused on the dual enrollment. If staff finds an answer, we'll call on them and let them know. Representative Schreiber, I think you have a little inside knowledge to contribute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I went to my source, Google, and they said CAMS was funded through an appropriation and not through property tax. But I don't want to overrule Jason. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative McNorton, and then Schmoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To be a member of KSHA, do you have requirements such as a full-time coach, trainer, anything like that that is required by KSHA that's above and beyond, I guess, or something?
Certainly there are requirements for that. Can I answer the other question, another question first?
Sure.
In terms of funding, as the person responsible for secondary schools in Wichita, every year I sent money to CAMS for the Wichita kids that were there. My FTE went to those kids, with them to Fort Hays State. So there is that as well. But back to your question, yes, there are requirements. There's first, the commitment to follow the rules of the association, putting the principal in charge to know those rules and then to delegate as appropriate. Coaching has certain restrictions and expectations, so you don't want to have anybody and everybody out working as a coach, so we have a little bit more rigorous standard for the coaches that are employed where there's training that's involved. If they're not a licensed teacher, then certain CPR, AED, et cetera, requirements. So there's a number of requirements that are there.
Same thing with your approved schools?
No, sir. Those do not exist for the approved schools. Okay.
Our last question is going to Representative Schmoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason, this is for you. I'm not sure how close either of these young men are that are at CAMS and wanting to participate to being 18, but if in current law, if they were to register to vote, they could do that at their school location. Is that correct? And not have to use their parents' home location?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, upon becoming eligible to vote, they could register at wherever they determine to be their residence at that time.
Okay, so their residence could legally either be where their school is or where their parents live?
Madam Chair, I believe, yes, it would be akin to a college student who goes away to college, but still maintains a legal residence back at their parents' residence.
All right, thank you very much.
Researcher, reviser, anything that you wanted to add on the discussion we just had as we had you hunting, or we kind of covered it? Okay, thank you all. Very interesting discussion. Thank you, everybody. And so today we set a new record for our latest. Yeah, so we will be working this bill tomorrow, and we will be working the other bill that we heard on March 10th. Thank you all very much for a great day.
Madam Chair.
Oops. Who did I hear?
Christy Hammer. I had submitted written testimony and asked to be on WebEx.
Okay, when you said written, we thought you meant written only. I apologize. We will give you 2 minutes. You may begin.
Thank you for your opportunity to present testimony. My name is Christy Hammer. I've been involved in public education for 28 years. I've taught and coached for 23 and have spent 5 years in administration. I wanted to speak in regards to the testimony that I sent in, and I appreciate the time that you've granted me today. The language in 727121 indicates that participation in activities are regulated, supervised, promoted, and developed by the Activities Association. So I am from USD 241, the district that has been mentioned previously in testimony. Since the enactment of KSA 727121, USD 241 has allowed unenrolled students to participate in activities that were regulated, supervised, promoted, and developed by KSHA. Our school still maintains its membership in KSHA, and if we've had any issues, we would have lost our KSHA eligibility. Some omitted facts from previous testimony and senior recognition night. Our school recognition night has not been tied to participation in activities. The board has been in compliance with KSHA 727121. In 2024, as tradition, USD 241 recognized all members of the 2024 graduating class of USD 241, whether they participated in KSHA activities or not. This year, the board did change its policy to allow participation in senior night, which allowed enrolled or unenrolled students to be recognized. As far as lettering, unenrolled students were allowed to letter if they met the performance requirements last year set forth by the student handbook. That was in 2024. The board has recently passed a policy that would continue that to allow non-public and virtual school students to letter. Some ambiguous language that is concerning for Senate Bill 114. What are district activities, events, and programs associated with KSHA activities? What are ancillary activities? If anyone can define that, it would help districts if this is passed. What are other promotional functions and other events or programs promoting the district's participation in KSHA activities? Does it mean that a student shall be entitled to all rights and responsibilities? What does that exactly mean? Is there anything left for local school boards to decide if whether unenrolled students should really letter? Is that an appropriate subject for legislation? At what point and where do we draw the line? Administrators will have to sort through a lot of questions like homecoming court. Who is allowed to participate in that? Who is allowed to participate in class activities? What about student publications? These are all questions these are all questions districts may be tackling in order to comply with the bill if it becomes a statute. Public school students are held.
You've reached your time limit. Thank you very much. Do you have questions for the conferee? Seeing none, we appreciate you being here today. And again, I apologize for the mix-up. Just for the future, you would label that oral WebEx. If you use written, that we assume that you're not attending either in person or WebEx. So just
Ma'am, I did have that on there. So thank you, though.
if it was our mistake, I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.